Well, hi everyone. So this particular talk we're doing on how to get 27% more conversions using 4 new Google tools. We will be stopping about 4 points midway through this talk for people to ask questions. So if you have questions already whilst looking through the slides, just get those ready to post. Great. I'm going to just start sharing my screen and get going. All right, so this is on how to get 27% more conversions using 4 new Google tools. We're going to go through each of these 4 kind of methods and solutions. All of them are free. So really, this is kind of more of an education kind of piece and letting you know about some tips and tricks that you should be using if you're not already, and then we've got a bonus tip or 2 bonus tips at the end. The first thing, just to make sure that Zoom kind of Q&A is working, can you just try posting a question in Zoom chat? So for example, I think Will's just about to post a question, which is a copy of the slides available afterwards? In fact, I've posted it in chat already. So yeah, if you could just literally post something, or also in chat, just say hello, just to check that like Zoom is working both on chat and on Q&A. To answer your question, the biggest problem facing SEO today is probably paid search taking over the SEO results, amongst other things. So first off, just covering some bases. When we talk about conversions, what we're really talking about here are goals. So in Google Analytics, you might be familiar with these things. So a sale or purchase or an add to cart, or if it's a lead gen website, it's going to be filling in a form, or maybe even a phone call if you've got phone call tracking active. In GA4, it looks like this. So where here you've got a purchase or any other interaction that's marked as a conversion. So that's the thing you want to get more of, and that's the thing you want to count more of. So obviously, the aim of today's session would be, score as many goals and count as much as possible. So there's a little bit of a running theme here. I'm not suggesting we're sort of moving goalposts here. This is really more about using all of the tools in your arsenal, so that you never underreport conversions, either if you're running an internal campaign or for a client. Ultimately, what we want you to do is have an amazing score and win the match, win the campaign, have awesome results. So how can you do that? So the first thing would be, it'd be great if you could, prevent goals getting blocked. So one way you can do that, other than kind of cutting off the goalkeeper's arms, is to reduce conversion blocking. And there's some methods that can do that, which may reduce that blockage by up to about 5%, which is great. You can have more conversions counted. Awesome. What else can be done? Well, maybe you can do conversion upscaling. Again, maybe you get more conversions counted, and I'll explain what upscaling is in a minute. What else can you do? Well, if you've got an amazing sort of striker, then maybe you can get an uplift in reported conversions up to 5%. And also, you want to make sure you're not making any obvious mistakes and not shooting yourself in the foot. So I've been a bit cryptic with what I mean by some of these things. Now that's intentional, but if you add all of them up, then the total should be roughly about a 27% improvement in conversions. So if you do all of those 4 things, you're going to walk away having almost just short of 30% more stuff being tracked, more stuff being reported. So if you think of that in terms of your CPA improvements and your outcomes, especially if you've got a bonus that is target based, then it's a great way to achieve your bonus. So how can you do that? So let's just walk through each of those 4 points and let me explain what they are. So the first one is GTM server side. So server side's great, especially in China and countries where any kind of Google or American kind of hosted tags get blocked by the Chinese firewall. It allows you to host on a Chinese top level domain, .cn domain, and means that the JavaScript file's not going to get blocked, thus you get more conversions counted. Additionally to that, ad blockers are getting quite good now at detecting analytics.javascript and other files and doing pattern matching, and it makes it much less likely that browser pattern matching will get triggered. Additionally, on Safari, there's heuristics that look for behavior that looks like a tracker. And if you've got all Google Analytics tags all sending pixels to one endpoint, it's really obvious to a browser that it's a tracker. Whereas if you change the host and the endpoint, it makes it much less likely it'll get detected by heuristics. So again, more likely to get through and thus not be blocked. The other one, so conversion upscaling, this is a big one. So this would be if you've got a lot of users that are opting out of tracking and then denying cookies, what you want to do there is count that opt-out rate, and it floats between 10%, 15%, sometimes up to 20% opt-out rates. What you can do with Google tools such as consent mode, you can take that opt-out rate and times it by the number of, let's say, transactions or goals. So you end up scaling upwards for your opt-out, so you end up with a more accurate conversion count. And then the other one, uplift in reported conversions, that would be when a user, say they're logged in or authenticated, and they then purchase or fill in a contact form, then you can tie to an email address that's hashed or encrypted rather than a Google Click ID. Massively improves conversion accuracy, ties stuff to a user rather than a session, and can result in an uplift of about 5% on search and up to 17% on YouTube in the count of reported conversions, as well as getting improvements in customer match and other sort of features. The other one here on the 2% for not shooting yourself in the foot, very commonly when we look at cookie consent tools, they're not configured correctly, or they're slowing down GTM, which they shouldn't be, and thus if GTM doesn't load in time, you end up not tracking users. So there's some simple things and simple checks that you can put in place that mean that you don't underreport by 2%. So let's go into each of those and just explain what they are and how you can make sure you're utilizing them. So just before we dive into that, quick bit about ourselves. So we're an analytics specialist agency based near Bristol. That's the largest tech hub outside of London. We've been doing this stuff the team have probably got about 100 years worth of experience. I've been doing this for 22 years or so a few kind of grey hairs almost. And we've recently got some awards for best new software, and some local awards in Bristol for like fastest growing agency. So that's quite exciting. We specialize in Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, and we're also a Cookiebot and OneTrust partner. So here's some of the clients and brands that we worked with. We normally get involved with big scale enterprise setups, where you need like a safe pair of hands, and it needs to be templated and rolled out across a massive list of countries and brands. But we've also done some medium-sized accounts as well. The key thing we normally do is try and template and build it in like Lego building blocks, so that we can do these rapid kind of rollouts. So on the first one, on GTM server side, so what is Google Tag Manager server side? So you probably all heard of Google Tag Manager, which allows you to add tags to a website. So Google Analytics tag, remarketing tag, Facebook tag, maybe an affiliate tag, etc. That all happens in the browser. So it's client-side code. Google Tag Manager is kind of like middleware, really. It injects the Google Analytics 3 or Google Analytics 4 code, and that code then drops a cookie and then sends a tracking pixel. And the host name of that is googletagmanager.com. And these are hosted in America and Europe, that sort of thing. Now, Google GTM server side is a newer technology. The key difference is that it's hosted on your environment. And there's this extra step at the start, which is the host name. So instead of sending to googletagmanager.com, it sends to server-side-gtm.yourdomain.com. And the benefit of that is, you get more conversions tracked, less stuff blocked, and also, there's some really good site speed benefits because it allows you to consolidate your JavaScript code library, and it's something, as a future-proofing your account, it's something you should be moving towards. There are some additional benefits on Safari. Safari kind of blocks cookies sometimes within 7 days if they're from a marketing campaign, and server side has some ways of re-identifying those users using like server side cookies, which are not hit with the 7-day restriction. So definitely a good one that you should be kind of building into your future proofing and adding to your kind of tech stack kind of plans. Here's some examples of some of the benefits of server side. Here we've got 5 different tracking libraries. So we've got Google Analytics 4 here, GTag, Google Analytics 3, Facebook, AdWords, and DoubleClick. Each of these has to load in order to send a relevant tracking pixel. So we've got 5 tags here. You can actually consolidate those into one tag using GTM server side, and then get that one tag to relay server to server through to these other places. So developers love this. Obviously, it's reducing your bloat client side, making the site load faster, as well as getting these boosts in counts of conversions from China and from the effect of ad blockers. Definitely something you should be doing, and here's some of the benefits that I've mentioned of doing it. Also on apps, it allows you to get around some of the restrictions of 20 events in iOS, and so you can do server-side relaying in an app environment, which is also pretty handy. Just out of curiosity, if you could put yes or no in the chat window, are you currently using GTM server-side? I'm kind of curious to know. It is a little bit fiddly to set up first time round, and verifying the domains, adding DNS records, and making sure you've got like on just one other tip, by the way, on Google Cloud, when you set up GTM server side, always make sure you have a primary and secondary payment method. Although it's almost free, it's like super cheap to host GTM server side. If you ever got a credit card or a debit card that's blocked, it kills, it stops tracking. So just one takeaway for server side, if you are using it already, just make sure you've got 2 payment methods set up. And the cost of server side is normally it's within the free $300 allowance per month, so it's pretty much free. But just make sure you've got 2 valid payment methods, ideally one being a direct debit. The other one is Google Tag Manager consent mode. This is a biggie. So this is really to make sure to allow tracking but remain compliant with GDPR and equivalents in America. The way that it works is it sends a cookieless pixel for the users that have opted out. And it's that cookieless pixel or a sampling kind of ping that's then used to sort of upscale based off the users that have actually opted in and allowed being cookied and allowed to be tracked. It's been around for about 2 years in terms of the system itself, although it's becoming a lot more popular because it's baked into Google Analytics 4. And if you've seen what happened with Facebook on an app environment where they dropped from like 100% of tracking down to a 10% opt-in rate, it's something that is really kind of necessary to account for the possibility that Apple may, make things a lot more difficult for tracking on apps and on mobile web. So it's really to foresee and to future-proof an increase in opt-out rates and prevent a sudden drop in counts of conversions. To give you an idea as to why it would be important, if you are running a Google Ads campaign and you're doing CPA bidding, if your conversion counts suddenly dropped by 90%, and that's going to mean that your CPAs are going to drop, and thus your automatic CPA bidding would suddenly do an inverse auction and pull all the bids down. So it's kind of in Google's interest to make sure that could never happen, and thus this is a benefit that Google is rolling out to everyone to prevent the chance of a sort of an inverse auction going a bit crazy on Google Ads. So how does it work if you're not using consent mode? So here we've got 1,000 clicks. Of those 1,000 clicks, let's say 50% of them, 500 clicks, opt in and click yes, I allow cookies, and then let's say 50% opt out. Now that's obviously quite high for an opt-out rate. Normally it's around 10 and 20%. So obviously any conversions that might happen within that group. So let's say it says 9 on there. Maybe it should say 50. I might just tweak these slides kind of afterwards. But in essence of that 50 that have clicked, if it's a 10% opt-out rate, a 10% conversion rate on a website, let's say it's lead gen, then you've got 50 conversions here. So Google Analytics, you'd report those 50 conversions, but actually there's another sort of 50 here, which users have opted out to say, no, I don't want to be tracked, so I don't want to be counted. So actually that really should say like 100 conversions, but because people have opted out, then you don't see those, they're blocked, etc. So you're undercounting for those denied and opt-outs. So what consent mode does in here, so if someone's come in and said, okay, yes, or then they've clicked on that deny button on here, then it looks like this. So here we have that 500 users, of which we've got we model from the 50 that have converted, how many conversions are likely to happen from that. So we've got like a 10% conversion rate here. So we've got that 50 here. So that 50 then gets added into the total. So it should say 100 on here, and I'll tweak these slides afterwards. So in essence, the conversion rate here, which should be, like a 10% conversion rate, is actually being reported as a 5% conversion rate because of these opt-outs. So in essence, the modeling bit and counting of those users that have clicked deny is really important. And also potentially it means that your conversion rate is also going to be more accurate. So if you're an e-commerce, if you start then ramping up your marketing, you're not gonna your purchases to sessions and i.e. conversion rate is going to remain the same. So it's also another thing that you'd want to really turn on as soon as you can, just so you have that stable conversion rate now, and then start ramping up. So have we got any questions in the chat about consent mode or what we've just kind of covered on the first kind of list? I'm just jumping to Q&A. If not, I'm going to ask a question to the audience, which is, do you know what your opt-out rate is? What's the percentage of people landing on your site that are clicking deny? Is it 10%, 15%, or 20% or more? Okay, and a related question, are people using consent mode already? So for instance, if you've got a 15% kind of opt-out rate, in essence, you're going to get 15% more conversions counted if you turn it on. One thing to be bearing in mind on Google Ads, if you do turn it on, you need to monitor your CPA levels, just to make sure you don't suddenly like overbid as well. Okay, if you're wondering like how do I work out what my opt-out rate is, well, luckily it shows you on the next slide. So there's two ways of doing it. One would be to log into your cookie management platform. So this one here, we've got CookieBot, and there's a report here where it says the count of accepted and the count of opt-outs. Now, rather annoyingly on CookieBot, it doesn't actually show you the percentage here, but you can download it and just manually work it out on Excel. So in here, we've got 20%, so that's relatively high, but this particular, this vertical is an area that is more likely to have higher opt-outs. So the other way of doing it, if you're not using a cookie management platform, is to compare your count of clicks versus your count of sessions. You can't block clicks, as in the parts of the redirect that happens. So whereas sessions can be blocked. So you can use the difference between the two to give you that percentage. So in this case here, we're on about a 5% difference of clicks versus sessions. Also bear in mind that sometimes people can double click. So actually, this is probably counting a little bit less than 40. It's probably likely to be more than that in terms of that difference. But yeah, you should really ideally check those two areas: your cookie management system and your clicks versus sessions to see what the percentage is likely to be. Ideally before enabling consent mode. And all right, the next one. So I'm curious to know how many people are using a consent management platform. Just put yes and no in the chat. If you don't know what a consent management platform is, you're probably not using one. It's basically one of these. So you've got OneTrust, CookieBot, some open source ones, and TrustArc in America. It used to be Trustee. And Civic kind of in the UK. The most common ones that we encounter normally tend to be OneTrust or CookieBot. If you're using OneTrust or CookieBot, and I'm just wondering again how in the audience, if the people that said yes, they are using a cookie management system, do you know, are you using automatic or manual mode? So the way to check that would be, you can look at the source code on the website and see if it says autoblock.javascript if you're on OneTrust, or blocking mode auto if you're on CookieBot. Automatic methods, what they will do, they will categorize cookies for you, and they'll put them into like targeting, performance, functional, strictly necessary, etc. So that's different to categorizing them within Google Tag Manager. So when I talk about automatic blocking and manual blocking, what I'm referring to is these two script methods here. Now, the way that they work is they scan through all the JavaScript files on a page, and then they change them from text-only mode, or basically automatically disable everything. And then when you click on accept, they then change them JavaScript, so they start executing. And they also store a cookie to remember your settings if you clicked accept. Now, automatic blocking is pretty cool in terms of if you've got a big site or a high risk kind of area, or it's difficult to be non-compliant on it. However, it's fairly easy to install it incorrectly. So the first thing, if you are using AutoBlock on one of those two tools, please make sure you add these sort of 3 lines that I'm just going to show you on the next screen. If you're not adding these 3 lines, you're basically missing out about 2% of traffic. So it's these 3 lines here, and this is within the Google Tag Manager script here. So this one says OneTrust ignore, CookieBot ignore. The reason why you need to do that is that the classification should happen within the JavaScript file. So for analytics.javascript or Facebook.javascript, it should not happen on the GTM file itself. If you forget to add this, then it causes GTM, which is a wrapper, to slow down not far in time, and thus it causes a bit of a latency. So just adding those 3 lines, and we've done this on some quite large sites and seen a significant boost in reported traffic by just setting it up correctly. And also OneTrust themselves recommend adding these 3 elements into GTM itself, or whatever tag management system you're using. If you're using manual blocking, which is something that I would recommend, long term it's better because it allows you to use consent mode modeling. So if you're using AutoBlock, unfortunately you can't use consent mode modeling. So that 15% uplift in conversions, sorry, it's not available to you unless you turn off automatic blocking and turn on manual classifications in Google Tag Manager. Normally what I'd suggest is actually doing the manual classifications first in Tag Manager. You can have them running both active and then turn off auto block. In effect, you do double cover for a bit, then turn off the automatic mode. The way that you would manually classify would be you'd go into Google Tag Manager and you see where it says here, so I've got cookie consent management system, so that should be strictly necessary. So without any classifications here, or if we've got a Hotjar tag here, that's an analytics tag, so that needs to be classified. For Google tags, they get automatically classified, so you don't need to touch them. They're done for you. Those categories, the ones you need to be careful of are just the ad storage or the remarketing one. That's the one that can get you into kind of hot water. So make sure you don't accidentally put like a Bing remarketing code or a Facebook code in the performance bucket. It should always be in targeting and in opt-in mode, ideally. In order to, if you don't see those settings for consent mode, that's because you haven't turned them on within container settings. It's a little tick box. Ideally, you'll have a separate Google Tag Manager account for development and live, and then you can kind of turn it on development in a silo. If you're not using a separate container, you'll have to just turn it on and make sure all the categories are sort of correct. The categories themselves here, so this is Hotjar and a classification for it. You would normally classify let's say the Hotjar page view tag. You don't really need to classify any tags that far after that. So things like Hotjar conversion tag or script that has a dependency on Hotjar page view, you don't need to put a classification on that. The same with the HTML5 video listeners, the scripts themselves don't need to be classified. They can be strictly necessary. It's only if they're dropping cookies or local storage you would need to classify them. So, and just bear in mind, for consent mode modeling, you need to log in and turn the option for Google Signals to on. It doesn't work if you don't do that bit. And And also you need to make sure that you set the default for consent mode in the cookie management system as well, and that must fire before the update to it. So when you click on an accept, that fires an update to the default consent list. So just and feel free to kind of reach out to me afterwards and I can explain this bit, but yeah, basically in the consent mode systems like CookieBot's template, you'd say, okay, the default for remarketing is off, but if they click on accept, then it changes to on. So just that's what I mean by the setting of the defaults. Another thing which is not strictly related to sort of conversion upscaling or that on here, but it is related to if you value your GA3 account, you should really turn the setting for anonymized IP from off to on. And I'm really surprised that Google haven't just done this across the board. In Google Analytics 4, it is on by default. In Google Analytics 3, it's not. So you should log into your account and change allowed features to either off, or better, change it to only be on after the user has clicked on accept. Cool. So we've got, I'm just going to jump over to questions now and see if we've got any other sort of questions in the list. So has anyone got any questions about consent mode, or is it all kind of make sense? Okay, no one's asking on that. We may I can always kind of jump to it to the end.
And Marie's asked, what is the biggest challenge facing SEO today?
Oh yeah, I think that one was asked at the front, just when we were like checking questions, so I wouldn't answer that one already. Yeah, will there be a replay? Yes, there will be. Cool. And so we're going to jump over to enhanced conversions. So what is enhanced conversions? So it's more about a future-proofing thing. So it's shifting away from attaching clicks to conversions. Instead, you're attaching users to conversions. And it's something that both Google and Facebook are both sort of shifting towards. Does mean you need to have really Google Tag Manager, and you need to capture the user's email, and you need to tick a box within Google Ads to enable consent mode. So there's 3 kind of technical pieces you need to get set up in order to activate it. There's a quick video here which is going to just explain what it is in probably slightly more elegant way. So let me know if you can hear this. Let's see what happens if I press play.
Evolving user expectations of privacy have led to additional privacy regulations and restrictions on cookies, changing the way the ecosystem measures conversions. Enhanced Conversions is one of the products in our privacy-centric measurement portfolio that was developed to help preserve accurate measurements when fewer cookies are available. Enhanced Conversions allow conversion tags to capture hashed customer data. Advertisers collect data on their conversion pages and then match it against Google logged-in data. Using Enhanced Conversions has several benefits. The short-term benefit is that advertisers will see more accurate conversion reporting. Early testers of Enhanced Conversions have seen a median conversion rate uplift of 5% on search and average of 17% conversion uplift on YouTube. Currently, there are 3 types of implementations possible for Enhanced Conversions. 1. Automatic. 2. Manual. 3. Via an API. The quickest way to implement Enhanced Conversions is automatic. Next, we will talk about the product roadmap. We are actively working to bring Enhanced Conversions across different platforms like Search Ads 360 and Google Analytics 4. Second, we are working on making it easier for advertisers to implement Enhanced Conversions and improve troubleshooting and diagnostics. And finally, we are working on building integrations with a large number of third-party TMS to make it easier to ingest data from them.
And there was just a question in chat regarding that. Does consent mode work with programmatic tools? So, I mean, the answer to that would be, is it part of sort of the Google tag? So that's Google is trying to consolidate both cookies, consent mode, anonymized IP, and a few other settings all into one place, so that when someone clicks accept, it then means that the AdWords double click, sort of Google Analytics 3, Google Analytics 4, etc. That's all the compliance bit passes everywhere. So I would need to check to see if I think on Search Ads 360 was mentioned on there. I think it is part of Google Tag, but double check within that, and as long as you see it in there, then it must be part of consent mode as well. Cool, we've just covered that. So you saw in that video, it probably mentioned the 5% uplift on search or 17% uplift on YouTube. That's a massive boost. And then What it probably didn't mention on there, and this is something to think about, would be on Google Ads, what I would recommend would be, in addition to turning on consent mode on your primary conversions, like your purchase and your lead submitted, you should also turn them on newsletter signups and login events. But with those two, they need to be secondary conversions. So the reason for that is to try and expand out your customer match, but targeting users, not cookies. So think of it a bit like dynamic remarketing, where you're targeting a product ID. It's just, instead of targeting a product now, you're now almost like targeting a user. So something to think about with Google Ads. And you'll probably notice in Google Ads, it recommends certain types of conversions you should have per category. Just be careful though, if you do use that method, make sure that you set the add to cart and the sign in and newsletter as secondary conversions, not primary, so it doesn't break your reporting and your ROAS bidding, etc. And also one other note, if you're on Apple and you're using the Apple anonymize email address feature, obviously enhanced conversions don't work. So you probably need to exclude everything that's an @Apple address. So it's normally like gobbledygook @apple.com. Those obviously will never match. Cool. There's some technical things about being able to enable this. Basically, you need GTM, you need AdWords, enhanced conversions ticked, and you need to be able to collect the user's email address. There may be a little bit of development work involved. Normally you can just use it using scripts within Google Tag Manager though. So I've just listed how the three features that you'd need in order to facilitate that here. Cool. So we're just coming to the summary now, and the key kind of takeaways. So the first one is, make sure you turn on a Google Tag Manager server side. That's going to give you your 5% conversion boost, helps with your SEO, with site speed, and it's just a good long-term one to cover. Number two was enable consent mode modeling. It's going to give you 15, maybe even 20% uplift in count of conversions, and it's baked into Google Analytics 4. Really important to cover. It's going to make you look good. So turn that on if you're allowed to. Just one other thing I didn't mention on that. In order to really use consent mode, you have to have a floating, or using a modal cookie wall. So if you're using a floating footer that slides up from the bottom, it doesn't really work properly with consent mode. And there's a risk you end up like double counting too much. So we're normally recommending actually not using consent mode in floating footer mode, only on modal mode or cookie blocking mode. And then make sure you turn on enhanced conversions with sending the email to Google or Facebook. GTM will do the hashing of the email, so you're not sending the actual user email kind of over the air. It's a 32 character SHA 256 hashed one. It's impossible to decrypt. It's just basically gobbledygook, so you're compliant on that one. So hopefully, if you're able to do all of those things, you should end up with 27% more conversions and a lot more goals being reported. I've jumped to questions again now, and see if people have got things they're not sure about. I have got a couple of bonus tips as well to give away, but let's just see if people have got any questions. Any recommendations on where to learn GTM server side? There's some really good videos on YouTube, which are obviously free. There's no official Google Academy course on server side, but you've got like Simo's courses, you've got Measure School. Both of them are really good. So I would kind of check out that material. And also Analytics Mania's, they've got some good material as well. Any other questions on chat? Okay, now I'm going to jump then to some bonus material. So this one here, if you're using Bing, now a really common implementation mistake with Bing is that it has a prerequisite, and that prerequisite is you must fire the Bing page view first before you fire any conversion tags. Now, I don't know why Bing don't just fire the library and the conversion tag at the same time. They just don't. And I wish the template in GTM for this would be updated. But so what commonly happens here, if you tried to fire, let's say, a Bing transaction tag here, or a purchase one, it doesn't work unless you fire it after the Bing page view. So what we normally recommend is with your Bing page view event here, this is on a trigger group here. So this is, let's say, click on accept and consent updated, or it's click on accept and then need be invoked if there's a cookie that's allowed. In this instance here, we've got a Bing page view that's only fired on the transaction page, which then fires the purchase tag afterwards. So this is basically a sort of a setup tag that fires a dependency after the page view only on that transaction has fired. You can also use a similar method on Google Analytics for if you're not using consent mode and you need like all conversions counted. Let's say you're in a B2B environment and you or outside of Europe, then you may want to kind of make sure that the GA4 config tag is always fired, and also a GA4 purchase event is fired after that. Similar sort of method. So just that's something to consider with Bing and GA4 on your key action pages if you're not using consent mode. And then the other thing is just some cool things to be aware of. So Google Analytics 3 and Google Analytics 4 have some cool features, things like conversion probability, which is a score out of 100 in terms of the chance of someone actually converting. Really good for remarketing lists. Also, there's smart goals in GA3, which is, are they engaged or not? Again, potentially useful for remarketing. And so this one here is smart goals, yes or no. And then this one here is transaction probability. So it's like, are they, so from these channels, which of them have a good rate of converting? So it's not just looking at the 2% that have transacted or the 10% that have filled in a form. It's like widening it to a larger, like let's say 50% group. So you're not excluding those people that are engaged and good quality traffic. So those are things, and we've talked about optimizing for conversion here, but you should also optimize for your add to carts and your micro conversions as well, because people may not necessarily convert on the first session. So and if you're doing high value orders, you need to consider these data driven approaches for conversion analysis. Targeting where good quality traffic is coming from. Also, the other one is smart lists in GA3. And in GA4 it's called intelligent alerts, and you've got your predictive audiences in there, your likelihood probability to buy over 7 days audience in GA4, which is again a really cool one to use for remarketing. And that's most of the tips that I was going to cover. So I'm just going to sort of check to see if there's any other things. Smart goals feature available in GA4 itself, but you do have predictive audiences instead, which kind of do a similar sort of thing. So you can do like a churn or non-churn audience instead. If you have a look at the GA4 demo account, so let me just see in here. I'm just going to see if I can jump to the GA4 demo account. So here we've got audiences, and we've got predictive 28-day top spenders. Someone's created in here, 7-day like likelihood to purchase. So it's not so much it's not the smart conversions, but it's more about predictive actions instead. And you'll probably find on GA4 it will recommend those audiences that it thinks you should add based off the industry that you're in. Sampling rate is different GA4 versus GA3. GA4 collects data compared to so more conversions due to sampling and predictive modeling. Yeah, I mean, we're normally comparing GA3 conversions and users and sessions with GA4. At the moment, we're actually seeing more conversions, and this is just without modeling enabled. We're still seeing more conversions counted in GA4, which is obviously a good thing. So actually switching over to GA4 from what we've seen so far also results in a slight increase in conversions. However, just bear in mind that GA4 doesn't dedupe conversions, whereas GA3 does, or doesn't dedupe goals, whereas a GA3 did. So that can cause a reason why conversions can be different between the two. Also, for sampling, hopefully you won't encounter sampling which is where you get like more than 1 million sessions in a query. That can massively affect kind of accuracy. However, be very careful you don't trigger cardinality in Google Analytics 4, because that can completely break your data. So when you're sending custom definitions, which are like basically custom values, make sure you don't send more than 500 unique things, if you do, you might start to see the data in not just the channels report, but all reports group into the word other. And then you can't then break out your count of conversions by channel or per landing page, etc., because it gets clustered into this cardinal group or other thing. So just be really careful about that, and don't send in things like user ID or a timestamp, because it will basically break Google Analytics 4, and aside from conversions, you won't be able to analyze those conversions. I'm just seeing if there's any other sort of questions. All right, I think that's it. I mean, I'll just hang around for sort of 5 minutes, see if we've got any other questions or things people are not sure about. We do have, it would be good to do a survey in terms of what people want to kind of hear about next. And so I'm just seeing if we've got a link to that.
I've just posted it in, Phil. Just I posted it in on the chat.
Okay.
So yeah, if you could just click that link for the SurveyMonkey survey, and would really appreciate it if you could take that. And also, it's your chance to let us know what you'd like to hear about next. So if there's anything particular that you're struggling with or just want to know about, then yeah, there's the opportunity.
Cool. And we got a question about the Bing template. Do you suggest implementing it on both GTM client side and GTM server side? I don't think there is a Bing template for GTM server side at the moment. There's only Google and Facebook. I've not, because we did a migration recently, and I didn't see it in the list unless they've updated it in the last few days. So the short answer to that one is no, because it's not a native sort of template in server side. I suppose you could do a custom image, but it would be better if Google just in the same way that Facebook have is build a server side template and just kind of do some of the work for you. Building custom templates in server side is a little bit fiddly. I mean, it's easier to do in client side for templates. So yeah, the short answer on that one is no, because there's no Bing server-side template. I think some of the affiliate networks have started to do server-side templates, so affiliate window, etc. I don't know why Bing's a bit kind of late to the party on that one. All right, I think we may do one on attribution modeling, possibly the next talk, because we've covered like improving the counter conversions. It is also very important to kind of know like which conversions are resulting, or the most important. And obviously Google Analytics 4 has got these data-driven conversion features. So we'll probably do something like that next time round. Cool. All right. Thanks everyone, and hopefully it's been useful for you.